You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here, hiding underneath those warm clothes and beautiful masks. So spoiled in San Diego. It's like 50 degrees and we're all panicking. You look at, I talk about this a lot as far as people say, oh, it's been so challenging, during the pandemic, which it has. And I talk a lot about how before the pandemic, I would constantly get questions that said, with everything that's going on these days, and then the question would follow. And now we've been in a pandemic for coming up on almost 2 years. March will be 2 years since things really got bad. And the question for the last nearly 2 years has been, everything's really difficult, especially these days. We're all hoping that at some point in the not too distant future that the pandemic will be somewhat behind us to some extent, whatever that means, I have no idea. 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, whatever it might be. And you know what questions people are going to ask then? Considering everything these days, what do we do? And so the reality is with this practice, it is something that becomes really important and critical to put in your lives regardless of what's going on. And there's always going to be challenges and difficulties and obstacles in our lives. I'm sure none of us expected the one we're in right now, because it's a pretty big one. But here it is, and there will be more obstacles in the future. And, I would say for me personally, for many reasons, these last 2 years have been the hardest 2 years of my life, absolutely. And that's when this practice really requires you to, we talk about in Buddhism, the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. Those are kind of the two wings of Buddhism, wisdom and compassion. And there's no greater time to very deeply, intimately explore the practice of wisdom and compassion in your life than when you're facing tremendous challenges. That's when it's most important, because it creates an opportunity for, I think, one to look at life in a whole new lens with tremendous gratitude and appreciation. At the end of every class I lead, and we do our closing transfer of merit, and I always now transfer merit to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during the pandemic and their family and friends who suffer at this time. And if we're all sitting here right now, what that means is we're still here. Many of us know those who are not, that have been lost during these last 2 years. And so the fact that we are still here is an opportunity to, again, really just find gratitude and appreciation for being alive and breathing. And these times are really humbling because a lot of the things that maybe in the past seemed so important, these are opportunities to recognize those things just don't matter so much anymore. So many people have had to surrender and give up and move beyond things that maybe made a difference before or seemed to make a difference before. Now it's like people wake up and hopefully are just happy, like, wow, I'm alive still. You know? So uh, these times, these days are challenging and difficult. And when I say these practice for anybody who might be brand new, I'm referring to the meditation and Buddhist teachings. It's called a practice. So the practice of meditation, the practice of looking at what the Buddha taught and putting it into your life, this is the time that it becomes incredibly valuable. And that's why at the beginning, where we take refuge in what's called the three gems or the three jewels, these teachings really become like a jewel, and they shine light. Um, the challenge is what it shines light on is your own mess. Not that any of you have a mess in your mind, but in case you do, that's what this shines light on. It shines light on your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And it creates opportunities to really explore that. So, always difficult, but incredibly valuable. So, with that, we'll go ahead and sit. Welcome to our millions of YouTube followers. Thank you for joining us. I can't see the screen, you're very far away, but I know you're there. There's not actually a million people watching, just in case anybody thought there was. So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. Just trying to push the stomach forward slightly. Allows the back to straighten. If you're on a cushion or chair, often sliding to the front third is helpful. Relaxing the shoulders. The hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything but to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, and they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, and compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samupata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we've responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that happened throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. But it's not an escape. And often people approach or come into meditation or Buddhism as if it's going to be the thing they'll escape to make everything else better. This practice and these teachings are an opportunity to hold up a mirror and reflect back on yourself, how your mind works, what you think, what you say, and what you do. That controls your reality, your thoughts, your words, your actions. The beauty of it is they're our own. They're our own thoughts and our own words and our own actions. Nobody else controls them. It's all you. So we have the opportunity to be very mindful of all of that. And as I said earlier, when I started tonight talking about cultivation of wisdom and compassion, the more we focus on positive thoughts, positive words, and positive actions, the deeper we cultivate wisdom and compassion. If our thoughts and our words and our actions are filled with greed and anger and ignorance, then that's the world we create around us. But it takes time. You know, if you're brand new to Buddhist practice and you're thinking like, okay, well, 6 weeks from now, I should be good. It just doesn't work that way. You know, it takes time. But if you're patient with yourself and especially those around you, and give it time for yourself to look at how you can change the way you think and speak and act, you'll find tremendous change in your life. Really quite drastic, but slowly. So with that, I'd rather just stop. And as always, I prefer to respond to questions around meditation, Buddhist teachings, anything that's on your mind. And we'll use the rest of our brief time together this evening for me to respond to your thoughts, your questions. We'll go from there. Yes.
I got a doozy for you.
Yes, I missed you. I thought maybe you'd skip town or something.
No. I'm going to be driving down the desert later on and watch the sunrise.
Okay.
The longest night of the year will be ending. And I wanted to stop by here and just kind of process something. I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and my son was brutally assaulted by LAPD a few years back.
Hmm.
And he has this horrific PTSD as a result. And the civil trial is taking forever, 4 years, which is torture for him. For the past 3 months or so, he's really intensified this suicidal ideation and talk. And things going dark, so I don't know where he is right now. So here's where I'm going with this. I'm starting to prepare myself, and I hate that. There's 2 reasons. One is I just hate the fact that I'm preparing myself. And the other is I'm a super positive person. It's like, we're going to find a way out of this. And I don't like to hit it. But as we were meditating, these thoughts, what am I going to do if I get the call? What's going to happen? That kind of thing. So I'm going to leave it there and let you take it, okay?
Yeah. So we'll start off with some light, gentle stuff this evening. Yeah, it's heavy. For those who maybe didn't hear, just to kind of repeat for everybody watching from home or wherever you are, the question is around you're headed off on a drive to watch the sunrise tonight, longest day of the year, and you're challenged with your son who 4 years ago was assaulted by the police and is still dealing with PTSD, and civil trials taking a long time. And he currently, especially over the last 3 months, is in a pretty dark place. And the thoughts and ideas of suicide are very, very strong on his mind. And obviously he's expressed that to you. So you find yourself in a place where you're trying to figure out, almost preparing yourself for that phone call. And what's that like? And what to do with that. And that's, there's a lot of levels here, a lot of layers, obviously. First, it's just the obvious things, which I would imagine as a loving, caring parent, and, exploring I'm just saying these things because I feel I need to say them, but these are things I'm sure you've already worked through. But, any sort of help, therapy, counseling, outreach, friends, if there's addiction involved, all that kind of stuff, you want to, as much as you can, exhaust all of those resources, and don't quit trying to utilize the resources that are out there. And if I can be of any assistance in any of that, call me, text me, track me down. I don't care, at 3 a.m, and just be like, Jeff, I need help. What do I do? I won't spend the whole time tonight focused on that, but that's there, because I've been around that for a long time, at different levels of the playing field, so to speak. But that's his stuff. And then the question is, what's that like for dad to roam around each day preparing to get a phone call, almost bracing yourself for the phone call? That's torture. That is, and I'm still not saying anything you don't know, but that's living hell. And that is what you're living in. So I give you props for even showing up every day to life, to showing up here, to facing that, because that is hell that you're living in. There's a bodhisattva, an enlightened being called Kusiti, and his vow was to be reborn into the hell realms over and over and over again. And a lot of Buddhist teachings talk about the different realms. And you're going back to Indian cosmology 2,500 years ago, but they had heaven realms and hell realms, just like, we refer to them today, heaven and hell, things like that. And a lot of Buddhist teachings will explore them as really just states of mind. That one moment throughout your day, you're in a very happy, peaceful place, like it's heaven. And one moment throughout your day, you're not there. You're the opposite, and that's like hell. So the question or the challenge now is, what do you do with that? And unfortunately, there's not much you can do except do what you've probably been doing, which is to be there for him as much as possible, to try to find joy in life as much as possible. Because while children are, in most cases, your entire world, they're also one part of it. And so it's incredibly important, not just in this situation, but for anyone, right? I mean, this is pretty extreme. So there's no comparing people's personal traumas and struggles. They're all different. But we all have things in our lives that are really painful and we face on a day-to-day basis that are like being in hell. And when we're in those situations, it's important to recognize there are other areas of your life that bring you tremendous joy and happiness. And you got to try to spend as much time there as possible. Because you can't control. How old is he?
37.
Yeah, so you can't control what he does or where he's at. And letting go of that control is so difficult. But it's really, for me, taking that as such a heavy burden on your shoulders and saying, hey, I can't carry that. And you shouldn't have to carry that. Now it's, easy for me to sit here and say, but you can't carry that, because if you do, it'll destroy you. And there are other people in your life as well that count on you, rely on you, love you, care about you, and they need you to be steady and solid and okay. And that's where you're really trying to find as much joy and happiness. I keep visualizing so much joy and happiness and beauty and wonders in life. And then there's this situation. And this one sucks. Beyond. Yeah. All the Buddhist teachings on impermanence and non-attachment and embracing each moment as it arises and not carrying around. And that's a lot of what you're doing, is you're carrying all that with you every single day. And I wish I could sit here and say, well, here's the magic to, let that stuff go. But,
well, Jeff, I think the magic is me putting it out there as you holding space for me.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, and you've heard it enough. There's a lot of questions and that's, again, for those who might be new to Buddhism doesn't answer all of your questions, right? It doesn't solve everything. It doesn't make things simpler. It creates an opportunity for us to look at life as it occurs and peel away, I think, the layers and the stories that we put on situations and just see it for what it is. And what this is your son is in tremendous pain. And that has a ripple effect deeply on those who love him. That's the truth. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Other thoughts, questions?
I have a 16-year-old.
I was thinking about you, and I didn't want to point it out, but I did look at you, and I almost pointed you out, but now I'll let you do it.
16-year-old daughter who's really smart, I think. And once in a while, she's challenging me, not because I hate her,
Mm-hmm.
but probably it's me. I belong to a different generation. It's a generational issue.
Mm-hmm.
How do I help her? I mean,
Yeah.
today I've been calling any therapist or psychologist that could help me, or maybe a family
Yes.
thing to help us.
Yeah, it's
understand her.
similar to what I talked about, but also, you're looking at a 16-year-old who's still in school, still under your roof, still, which is a very different situation from someone who's 37 and grown. And so these are two separate situations. A lot of the things I shared are very much the same, with letting go of the control, the expecting. I don't know any 16-year-old that listens to their parents. And I'm sure there's a few out there, just right. For whatever it's worth, and you've probably never met my mother, but she'll tell every parent who's having trouble with teenagers, there's hope for all of them. Right? So I work with a lot of teens, and I've never met too many that were worse than I was. So I think sometimes we have to allow them space to carve their own journey, their own path. And it doesn't mean, again, I'm not a parent. I don't give parental advice per se, but there's obviously different, you can call them rules or whatnot to live in your house. But, we look at our karma, the Buddhist teachings on karma, and your 16-year-old daughter has her own karma, has her own path. And, when you say you wonder if it's you, it's not so much that it's you, but you have two different people that, as you say, different generations, different time, different views, different experiences, different maturity levels. And she's not going to listen to you or agree with you or like most of what you say. That's kind of how it works. Unfortunately. But don't give up hope, because what you can control is your reaction to her when she does things that act out, or out of her anger or depression or sadness or whatever it is. That's what she's feeling and carrying, and that's what she's acting out on. And that can change the direction. But if you respond back in the angry way or the yelling way or things like that, it just makes things worse. So that's all you can control. And I think not just with children, but anyone in life, the most important thing is that those that are in our lives that we're close with, is to try in any way to let them know and feel that you care about them, that you love them, and that you're there for them. And in that regard, 37 or 16, it's the same thing. They're both old enough where if they just want to get in their car, I don't know if she drives or not, but if they want to get on that bus or get on that Uber or whatever, they're gone. They're pretty free. And you can't always do anything but let them know you love them and you're there for them. And that's, to me, what, when you look at Buddhist teachings on compassion, is to have that endless compassion for people, regardless of what they do, because you understand that they're suffering. Any of you ever done things that caused harm or pain to self or others? And the reason we do it is because we're suffering. And then as a parent, the quick, immediate response is, well, then how do I fix their suffering? But it's not like when they're 3 and you can just put a Band-Aid over their knee. They have to work through their own suffering. And yeah. And yes, same thing, like you said, find therapy, counseling, anything that they're willing to do. But they have to want to do it. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? And I think really just one more thought on both of these really is you look at the Buddhist teachings on impermanence, and it's really important to understand that every difficulty, every challenge, every struggle in our life, it changes. Impermanence is not about ending necessarily or it being over. For me, I've always looked at impermanence simply as change. Everything changes. And so the situations the 2 situations that you both shared, and every other situation in all of our lives sitting in this room, every situation you're in right now will change. And then we choose whether we want to label that change as good or bad. And that's where we get ourselves in trouble. Because we want to call and look at situations as good or bad. And if we see them as bad, then we want to fix them and change them. And if we see them as good, then we want them to stay that way forever. Understanding impermanence for me as a practitioner is to just embrace that everything is changing constantly. And then we are challenged to respond with kindness and compassion as things change, which is super difficult when it's people around us that we know and love. And yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
So what you're saying is, in any difficult situation, if we want change, it has to come from within.
Yeah, definitely. And there's again, probably not the best metaphor when you're trying to raise a teenager, but Shinra Suzuki, who you've heard me talk about him before, but who I really read or studied the most, a Zen master who built San Francisco Zen Center, 50s, late 50s, early 60s. He talked about his teaching on, for me, I look at it as kind of a leadership mentor type situation, but I think it really applies the same thing to children to some extent, is to allow them to not try to control them. Use the references of when you have, say, cattle, and you can't fence them in and control them, but you also can't just let them run completely wild. What you do is you observe, you watch, and you see where and what you can do in specific situations that maybe can be helpful. But if you try to really get, too tight and controlling, then you get pushed away, right? And if you completely ignored her, that's not wise either. But for me, the practice has always been just to see where you can add value, where you can add support, where you can add love, where you can add help, where you can benefit a situation. And then to do that in a non-attached way, the Buddhist teachings on non-attachment is that you're not attaching to any sort of expectation or outcome, but you're just there for them. And all you can do is bring what you bring to that situation, but you're not attached to the outcome. Really difficult. Yeah.
Thank you for that powerful.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I feel for you both. I mean, it's very difficult.
You know, Jeff, it's like the more negativity and darkness I generate in this, I feel like I'm sending that out.
Yeah.
And the more equanimity I can show, the more I'm sending that out on a spiritual level.
Yes. And that's healthier for you and everybody else.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, letting go of trying to control, if the child is 3 years old, I'm not saying let them roam the streets. Right? But letting go of trying to control people we know and love is so difficult, whether it's children or relationship partners, whatever it might be, friends. But when you can surrender control, which is what so much of us try to do our whole lives, is try to control other people, other places, other things. And that control a lot of times is driven by, the anger, the frustration, the dark place, We don't try to control people. That's not love. That's fear. That's anger. And so we try to control what they do and where they go. Non-attachment to me, in looking at Buddhist teachings, is actually love. That's what non-attachment is. Because you're not trying to control them. You're letting them be who and how they are. And that's how they are. I think of it as like if you go bowling and you have kids, they put up the little gutter blocker things. So which I'm not a fan of. I think a kid should learn that the ball is going to go down the gutter sometime, but we don't have time for me to get into that tonight. Right? But they put up the thing that blocks the gutter so the ball doesn't go down there. Right? Although then the other day I saw that, which I actually thought was kind of cool. I saw they have this almost little slide thing. And so kids can come up and set it on the slide, and then it just goes. Again, come on, let the kid throw the damn ball and let them know that it's going to go in the gutter once in a while. But again, not my point. My point is you have it blocks the gutters. And so I used to use this metaphor a lot. I haven't used it in a while. Lots have changed in bowling since I've used this one, apparently. But that in these situations like this, you're trying to be over here protecting the gutter. And you're just trying to keep the ball swerving down the lane. That it's not easy to do, but you have to give them room to go on their own course. So, because the fighting doesn't work. The constant fighting, arguing, all that kind of stuff. Again, you're not saying any of this. I'm just assuming a lot of that goes on. So, anything else before we wrap up here. Any final thought or question?
Thank you again. That was,
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you.
My pleasure. Anybody, anything? All right, so we'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to the family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple about coming up on 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus or masters or teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on. Tuesday, I do this. Wednesday, Alex does a loving kindness, metta meditation. And Thursday, Travis does the Dharma Bum Basics and meditation. And then I do this same thing on Saturday as well. Everything else we have is still on Zoom, virtually. Also, our recovery Sangha meets in person twice. So anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, life in general, that meets Tuesday nights downstairs, and as well as Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, we also sit at 8 and 8:30. So if you find yourself just wanting to come here at 8 or 8:30 in the morning and do a silent 25-minute sit, we'll be here. Temple is still closed, and during the day we were closed for 16 months. Most of you know that, but and we opened up again on a very limited schedule, limited basis a few months back. So grateful to be open. I had announced the last couple weeks about our upcoming New Year's, which we have historically done a midnight meditation. We do a potluck. I tell the history of the Dharma Bum Temple. We do a midnight meditation. And we decided a couple days ago that we're not going to do that. We just figure with COVID cases on the rise and things getting not better, and people traveling a lot right now, especially Christmas to New Year's, that dropping 45 people in here on New Year's would not be the smartest thing to do. So believe me, we hate gathering. We hate not gathering as much as everybody else does, but we have to do our best to keep things safe. So if you're going to have a silent and sober New Year's, which is always our pitch, it's going to have to be on your own. So unfortunately, we won't be here for New Year's. But Christmas Day, Saturday morning, I'll be here for meditation at 11. New Year's Day, they both just happen to be on a Saturday. So our normal Saturday, 11 a.m., New Year's Day and Christmas meditation will happen. So thanks all for being here. Please be safe. And good luck to everybody, but especially the situations. And like I said, if you need anything, y'all know how to reach me. So just reach out, and I'm happy to be a resource if I can. And I know you've tried for probably 2 years to get her here, so keep trying.
That was just what I needed. Thank you.
Good, dude. How you been?
Good.
Yeah.